ago, 92 photographers fanned out across the state of Oregon. They took pictures of farmers and fishermen, a nurse taking care of an elderly patient, a little boy getting a haircut, a gymnast mid-leap. Together, those thousands of photographs told the story of one day, July 15th, 1983. Today, a new crop of photographers, including some veterans from that 30-year-old experiment, are at it again. It's called Oregon Project Day Shoot, and it's happening right now. We want to know if you're taking pictures for today's follow-up 30 years later. Our website is opb.org/thinkoutloud. Our number is 1-888-665-5865. Michael Lloyd joins us in the studio right now, senior photographer for the Oregonian, one of the organizers of Project Day Shoot 1983 and this year. Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Happy Oregon Journalism Day.
Yes, as signed officially by the governor just a few weeks ago. Where did the initial idea for this project come from?
It came from Michael Thompson, who's a photographer at the Hillsboro Argus, who approached several of us in Portland and promoted the idea of doing a day in the life of Oregon. At that time, the series of coffee table books, the first being A Day in the Life of Australia, had been published, and we started meeting to see if we could pull it off.
You told Afani Bell, one of the producers for our Arts and Life page recently, that in general you see these A Day in the Life projects as editorial cop-outs because the only overarching story is it all happened on one day. Have you come to appreciate them now that you've taken part in one and are in the middle of another right now?
I appreciate them, yes. I think they're very different than classic photojournalism, and the textbooks will call them cop-outs, and I somewhat agree, because they're not really a story in the traditional sense, but they are a tremendous collection of moments in a place, in a time. And I really think this year's project is likely to be more interesting than the first one, because we can compare from 30 years ago.
What do you remember from 30 years ago, July 15th, 1983? What were you doing that day?
I remember it well. I was working that day. I was working on a picture story for the long-defunct Northwest magazine, the Sunday magazine of the Oregonian, on the closing of the legislature. And I had gained access through the Speaker of the House, Brad Cairns, to be present at some rather exclusive and none too friendly negotiations between him and Senate President, which ultimately ended in Governor Atiyeh suggesting they adjourn and come back when everyone calmed down.
What are some of your favorite shots that you took that day?
Well, I think I was in Speaker Cairns' office at like 7 in the morning when he was meeting with Ed Faley, who was then Senate President, and was kind of standing in the back of the room when they were waving their arms and yelling at each other. And then at the end of the day, they were all sitting meekly in Governor Atiyeh's office, who was a little frustrated with the entire process.
What do we have? I mean, and I have the book. I mentioned there were thousands of photos that were taken 30 years ago, and a few hundred were collected in this book called One Average Day. What happens when you put those photos together? You choose the best ones and you put them together in something that hopefully can last for a very long time. What have you accomplished?
Well, I think I've always believed picture editing and the design of the story was as important as the individual photographs, and there were 3 or 4 of us that worked together on that book in '83. Of course, the Historical Society had a book publishing wing at that time, which no longer exists. And looking back on it now, I'm more conscious of the historical value. You know, when you look...
You didn't feel it then?
Well, it was something that had enmeshed in for months and months, you know. It was more immediate then. But 30 years later, it's almost like looking at any historical photo where even the simplest image can gain great value that you may not have felt when it was made.
Is there an example of that in this book? Some image that just could be mundane, but that you feel really stands out and it speaks to history now?
I think just the average street scene, seeing how people dress, the cars, the theater marquees and what was popular in the day. Um, Simple things that are very commonplace at the time the photographs are made.
If you're just joining us, we're talking right now about Project Day Shoot, which is happening right now. Professional and amateur photographers all over Oregon are taking pictures today, trying to capture the state of average day. What do you think images should be going to try to capture the state in one day? Our website is opb.org/thinkoutloud. Our number is 1-888-665-5865. Brian Burke joins us on the line now, one of the other organizers of Project Day Shoot, and flying around today on a private plane, as I understand it, to take pictures for the project. Brian, welcome to the show. So, where have you gone so far today? Still, Bonneville Dam, Hood River, Klamath Falls, Bend, Fort Rock, that's not a bad half day's work so far. Yeah, that's one of the messages. That's one of the take-home messages so far from this is flying a plane. Um, what have you taken pictures of as you've gone? Pictures that you actually that you love so far. Some specificity for what's happening in the middle of July in average Oregon year. Why did you want to do this again? To get the band back together along with a whole bunch of new musicians to do this again? Michael, with Facebook, Instagram, and on, it seems like every day is as cataloged in its own way as July 15th, 1983 was. There have been such obvious revolutions in cameras and sharing of photos. There's a pretty good camera in everyone's pocket these days. Does that change the project in any significant way?
It will make it incredibly interesting. We've assembled over 150 of Oregon's best professional photographers, but anybody can participate in this year's competition. And that's as long as you can write a caption about what you photographed and add the hashtag DayShoot30 in that caption, we will be able to find your pictures wherever you post them, on your personal accounts or on ours. And we have Twitter and Facebook accounts as well. But regardless of that, this is going to be a living example of an old adage in photojournalism that the best cameras are going to have with you. And the best advice for a photographer is F8 and be there. Today, everybody is there with a quality camera, and we see that every day.
What are you planning to do with the photos that you guys get from this? I mean, I have this beautiful book in my hand that Brian said he found. Sadly, the remainders pile at Powell's. But Michael, you'd said that this was back when the Oregon Historical Society was putting out big photo books. Is a book in the future for this new project, or is it just too expensive? Has the time changed when, and is that no longer feasible?
Well, that remains to be seen. But one thing that is possible is to use the technologies of the 21st century to create an ebook, which could then contain multimedia features, videos, slideshows, galleries, that kind of thing, as well as traditional print layouts. And
do you think that's something that someone's going to look at 30 years from now, though, the way we can look at the book from 1983?
Well, I won't be around 30 years from now, so actually, it would be wonderful if we had the resources or sponsorships or volunteers to make a print book, because it is a permanent thing. But we're working on that.
Brian, we have about 30 seconds left, and you probably need to hit 17 other cities in Oregon. But what are your hopes for what will happen with these photos? Brian Burke and Michael Lloyd, thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Brian Burke and Michael Lloyd are organizers of Project Day Shoot. Michael Lloyd was a part of it in 1983. He's also a senior photographer at the Oregonian. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk to a man from a farm animal sanctuary who has said that many urban chicken owners do not know what to do when their chickens stop laying. And he says he's taking care of some of those non-laying chickens right now. We're also going to look at allegations of ethics violations brought against a Kitzhaber advisor who pushed for the Columbia River crossing. Thanks very much for tuning in today. I'm Dave Miller. Have a great Monday.